Good morning, church. In fact, I do bring greetings from all members of the governing body and to our former mayor and Congressman Steve Rothman, the former police chiefs, I see Chief Banta, and to all the wonderful men and women in blue who join us today on this very sad but very special day. David Bowman was a dear friend, mentor, and inspiration to me and so many in our Englewood community and beyond. He lived the kind of life of morals and conviction that people spoke about as ideals, but you rarely see in action, but that was David. He had deep roots here with great pride. He loved the youth and was enthusiastic about teaching children and instilling a sense of excellence. I remember when as chief of police, he would proudly park his police car in front of his home, not to show off, but to tell people in the community that a man of color could become from modest means and become the head of a department. Amen. He shared that pride, the community shared that pride with him, and they felt that they could too achieve this. Looking back, I think of the time that I spent with David, Jack Draper, Dick Sheffield, I can see a reunion, if you would, happening as we speak. Working in the basement of Nesbitt Funeral Home during election time was an eerie experience to see that everything was happening at the basement of the funeral parlor. He was in many ways a throwback to the past generation, the generation where Dr. King had graced this great city, clearly evident in his words and actions, striving to build upon the people of the community by not knocking other people down, but by educating and motivating them to rise up together. Looking back from where we stand, we can see that David was also ahead of his time. He believed in equity, social justice, and the movements of today were simply the way of life for David. We saw in his interactions in the Spanish and in the Jewish communities, even when he didn't think anyone was watching, the sense of excellence that he had. He carried and conveyed this pride, not just in the Black community, and his love of children, and his expectations for all of us, but it was that wise to follow in that way. David was working hard to make sure that Black Lives Mattered in England long before it became a common phrase. Not as a movement, but as a natural order for him. He led and taught by example, and I feel fortunate to have had the personal privilege to be his mayor, to be his friend and neighbor. The former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom once wrote in praise of a book that I wrote called Safe Haven in America, "Only once does the Hebrew Bible command us to love our neighbor. Yet on 36 times it commands us to love the stranger. A neighbor is one we love because he or she is like us. A stranger is one we are taught to love precisely because he or she is not like us." David lived by the book. His actions were of biblical import. He showed us his love for the stranger and his noble passion for humanity. When a man lost his father, he saw the injustice in denying him the opportunity to bury and honor the grief, and to grieve for his own dad. It would be unnatural for him not to allow this young man to have this biblical right. So he took the man, a prisoner, yes, but a man first, to attend his father's funeral. People tried to make fodder of it, but it didn't stick because there was no wrongdoing, there was no evil intent. David stood strong and the community stood with him, and I was humbled to step down from the dais and speak in support of him as a friend and stand by as a private citizen. Ultimately, David simply wore this humanity proudly as he wore his badge and above all else made himself the valuable leader that our police department and our community needed, that shining example of what community is about. Too often we take for granted the leaders and mentors in our lives simply because they carry such a presence that we think they'll always be there and that they won't falter. My own father is now 89 years young, experiencing some of the same circumstances David encountered in recent years. These are reminders of the fragility of our lives. Their values are clear. We learn as much from them and more from what they did than what they actually had to say. It's up to us to take that mantle from David and carry it forward and onward. I know that the impact that David has had on me and the youth of our community and around him is a legacy that we'll all be proud of. to David's family, to Gene and the loved ones and everyone that have touched his lives and he's touched your lives, know that his legacy will be there for future generations and that we will carry the same dignity, humanity, and love that he showed